And well, you saw the title of the video, so let's get into it. Either way, my opponent starts with e4 and I go c6, which is my normal move. Also, I figured out how to take off the move annotation things where it says like best move or excellent move, because I don't know, it's they're not very useful at low depth because sometimes it says something's inaccurate, and then either way. So c6, my opponent plays d4, d5, the Karo Khan. My opponent goes knight f3, takes, knight f6, takes. And this is the Tartakower variation. And the Tartakower is very useful in a lot of ways. I mean, there are lines where you can get a pawn cube over here with this pawn moving over to g6, and then some interesting lines may occur after that. Play continues here after my opponent plays knight f3 and I go bishop d6, all very, very well-known theory. Play continues here pretty equally, and a lot of these games actually filter out into a draw, and we normally get very high percentage of accuracy in these games. So my opponent goes bishop d3, castles, and I go rook e8 after some thought, because I thought, okay, I wanted to do a couple of things. I wanted to play this move c5. I wanted to play c5. I wanted to go bishop g4, and there's a couple reasons why I didn't play those moves and why I just settled for the very basic, very simple, put the rook on the open file type thing. The reason I didn't play c5 was after c5, I thought that I was worse after this move d5. And even the engine may not think it, d5 is a little scary. d5 is a little scary because the point of c5 is normally so that my knight can get up to c6. So why would I play c5 then if he just had this? And that's kind of why I rejected c5. Maybe I should have thought more about it. Maybe it could have been interesting, but that's why. And then besides, and bishop g4 I didn't think was that good either. The reason was h3 is very, very logical. Bishop h5. I thought that at the very least he could probably play this move, bishop e2. And then what is my bishop doing? I mean, I don't want to trade for this knight. I probably have to reposition my bishop. I'd probably go, I guess I go rook e8 here, and then, yeah, I don't know, maybe eventually I play bishop g6, but I just didn't like this position very much. I didn't think that I had many winning chances, and I didn't really understand what my bishop was doing. So that's in the end why I played rook e8. That's in the end why I played rook e8. A very reasonable move. Now, my opponent goes rook e1, of course, very normal. Oh, and you may notice that after the annotations, the trade-off from the annotations was that I actually have to deal with the stupid light-colored board the entire game. But, you know, it's either that or having to see all the best moves, and I don't want that to happen. So, rook e1, I go bishop g4. This is a little bit of different position, because at the time, now I think bishop e2 might not be the best move. And the reason is because I might be able to play something else. I might be able to play like bishop b4 or something, and then takes and something like that. I don't know. Maybe. Either way, I played bishop g4 now. My opponent takes on e8. I take back with the queen, and my opponent goes bishop e3, which I thought was a great move. I thought that this whole line was pretty good for me, just because I'm threatening, for example, bishop f3, and I thought that, for some reason, I thought that if you were to allow this, you were to play something like this, I might play this, he would have to take back with the queen, and for some reason, I thought this was bad for him. I guess maybe this move, yeah, because after takes, I take the bishop, but I actually lose here very, very unceremoniously. My opponent plays the move bishop h6, briefly sacrificing another rook. So I'm be up a rook and a pawn here. I'm just looking at the engine line. Queen g4 makes very much sense, and oh, I'm just losing, yeah, because he's threatening checkmate on c8 and he's threatening mate on g7. That's just a fork of two mates. That's a little bit fork of two mates is a little bit hard to circumvent, but I missed that. I missed that he had bishop h6. Either way, I played knight d7. because I thought it was very reasonable. My opponent played h3, and I of course played bishop h5. If I don't accidentally hit the down arrow, I played bishop h5. Very reasonable. And my opponent thought here for a while and ended up playing a very interesting move. My opponent ended up playing g4. And what's shocking is that this is the best move. I thought this was an inaccuracy during the game, actually. I thought that that the move g4 kind of gave me some stuff. I mean, for one, the h3 pawn is weak, but the most important thing is that the knight on f3 lost a defender, so now the queen could be glued to that square in the future, and I thought that was pretty good. And I'm never really worried about the pawn cube, which does happen now, because I mean the pawn cube, it's a pawn cube. He has no forward momentum. I guess this move, but then I can always just play probably f. Oh man, there's a nice move here. There's a bunch of nice moves. I guess queen e4 makes a lot of sense. Yeah, queen e4 is probably the most interesting, because after it takes, I just get my knight in the game, and I'm better here. So I was never scared of the pawn cube. And this happens during the game, but my opponent doesn't play g5. My opponent goes for queen d3. Very reasonable move, developing the queen. And the idea isn't that he's developing the queen. The idea is that he's going to play this move. The idea is rook e1. So I have to strike now. And I do. The move I play here makes a lot of sense. And I thought about this for a while. I play c5. c5 is very reasonable. At first, I just thought that it didn't really do much after takes, bishop takes, knight takes. But then, I mean, look at this, look at that. Let's go to that position. Takes. Let's go to this position. This position, my knight gets in the game. My knight can go to e4, by the way, which is a really nice square for the knight. I guess after e4, he has rook there, but he has these weak pawns over here. If my opponent goes for, I don't know, where would my opponent even go? Probably queen e3, trying to get a queen trade. I probably wouldn't accept the queen trade. I'd probably play something like queen b5 to start targeting pawns. Then after that, I get rook e8, I get knight in. My position just looks better. It feels like I have an initiative. Even the engine calls it equal, or maybe minusculely better for black. This position is hard to play for a human, and my opponent probably shouldn't actually take. In all honesty, I think my opponent probably should have played something like rook d1, for example. Rook d1, or maybe like c3 or c3. C3 is equal. Rook d1. Yeah, rook d1 makes sense. Rook d1, I feel like, is just a good move, because after takes, he'd probably capture with the bishop, actually. And that's interesting. He could have also played rook e1. Rook e1 also makes sense, because after takes, bishop takes, it comes with tempo. But you never know. So my opponent decides to capture. I recapture, and my opponent ends up playing the move rook e1 here. A little bit of an odd move order, but it doesn't really matter. I'm still going to put my knight in the center here. I'm going to put my knight on e5, targeting the queen, targeting the knight. So he has to either take my knight or defend his knight with the queen. He can do that by either queen e2 or queen e4, which makes a lot of sense. He decides to take. Reasonable, but now I get my queen in the game. And my opponent malfunctions here, and this is why the video is titled what it is. Part of the reason why. The other reason is because of my own wrongdoings. My opponent takes my bishop, and yeah. This is lost. I just come back to e5, and my opponent simply resigns the game. Does he? Yeah, he just resigns the game here. And, I mean, what are you supposed to do? This is just... I mean, if you're playing like this, are you really 2000? Not in this game, you're not. Not in this game, you're not. So, let's get into game number 2. So this game, I decided to keep the piece moves on. I decided to keep, like, the book moves and stuff on, because I think it makes a lot of sense. Oh, by the way, in the last game I played at 98% accuracy, which is pretty nice. I play d4 here, of course, my normal opening. My opponent plays f5, and I get what I want. I get what I want to play. And this game was a lot of fun, actually. I had a very good time with this game. I get queen d3. This opening is opening that I don't see very often. No one knows what to do against this opening. Basically, the point is you sacrifice the g4 pawn, and you play it like kind of a Benko style, but either way, that's a moot point. My opponent plays e6, I go g4, and my opponent decides to capture on g4, which is already an inaccuracy by my opponent. Clearly, he doesn't know what to do, and already I'm probably in the driver's seat. h3 is, of course, the best move. This is the whole point of the opening. I was kind of calculating queen h4 here. I know it's lost because my theory says it's lost, but I'm not entirely sure about this move. Queen h4, I didn't really know what I would be doing here, and I didn't like g3 ideas. I guess I could simply develop, but then I thought g3, and I didn't think that I'd be doing very good. I guess, yeah, I suppose the idea here is that even after this, and my king is kind of weak, I just have so much development, and I'm doing much better. Yeah, okay, I can get behind that. My opponent didn't play queen h4. My opponent plays one of the main lines. My opponent plays g3 himself, and this is the best move actually. I take back with my queen, and my opponent plays knight b6, and I think for a while here, and I end up playing an accuracy. I end up playing this move c3. The reason why I didn't play knight f3, I don't really know. I don't really know why I didn't play knight f3. I know the reason why I didn't play e3 because, of course, my bishop would be blocked, but I don't know why I didn't play knight f3. Knight f3 was clearly the best move. I should just reconsider my life choices, but I'm not too sure why I didn't do that. Either way, c3 is a completely reasonable move. It defends the pawn. I guess one downside is that the knight can't develop to c3 now, but it's okay. My opponent plays b6. I go bishop g2, trying to fight for the diagonal immediately because I want to. I don't want to mess up. My opponent plays bishop b7. I play bishop f4, which I thought was a very nice move. Basically just saying this pawn on c7 is a big weakness, and it's actually kind of tricky to defend it because d6, the e6 pawn gets quite weak, and I thought that was very interesting. It is. My opponent plays g6, of course, and I just make a massive mistake here. Another point why this video is titled what it is, I play a shitty move. I play the move queen e3. And what's fun, the reason why this move is so stupid, isn't because it's just blunders, obviously. It blunders knight d4 and I'm down material, but the reason why it's so stupid is because I saw knight d4. And then I proceeded to forget about knight d4. After seeing knight d4, I just decided that, you know what? No, knight d4. No, that's not a move he can play. Of course it's a move he can play. It's obvious that's a move he can play. And he misses it. He plays queen d7 and gives me a great advantage. But I'll show you why knight d4 is so good if you're confused. Knight d4 here, he attacks my bishop. He attacks the c2 square, so I'd just be losing a pawn. I probably have to go cd. Yeah, cd, because after queen d, he has this move e5. So cd, my opponent takes, and I go here, and I'm just down a pawn. I'm worse. Yeah, I can't believe I just forgot about that move. That doesn't normally happen to me, but yeah, stupid me, I guess. That's another reason why it's a bad game, but I did kind of like this game, and I played d5. Which is the best move, of course. It's the only move, actually. d5 makes a lot of sense, and I thought I was actually doing much better here, because after this move, knight e8, I would take on d6, and I'd be attacking the queen and the bishop. Well, I wouldn't be attacking the bishop is defended, but after something like queen e7, which I thought was good, I would trade the bishop, knight comes back, and then I'd just be much better. Much better. Oh, and if you're wondering, after knight here takes, and something like not knight takes, because knight is defending the bishop, something like queen takes, I can just take the bishop first. I believe I can just take the bishop. Is that correct? Wait. I need to calculate a bit. What is... Okay, here, queen takes knight. Oh, the reason why is because, yes, the reason why is because at the end of the line, I recapture the queen, And then after knight takes, you might say after bishop takes that knight takes bishop, right? Knight takes bishop, right? Because two bishops are hanging. Two bishops are being attacked, but I'm attacking the rook. And if the rook moves and attacks my bishop, I have this nice check on c6 that gets me out of trouble. Okay, that's why. So d5, my opponent goes knight e8. I mean knight d8, I go de. And my opponent finds this nice move, queen c8. And this is a very good move. This is a very good move, all things considered. Because he's not recapturing the pawn just yet. He's saying that it's a weakness, and it's going to be lost soon. And I have to admit, he's right. It is absolutely a weakness, and it will be lost soon. But I have the pressure now, and he is kind of on the back foot. So I take the bishop, queen takes, and I go knight f3. Very reasonable move. It simply develops a piece, but it's more than that, because it also opens up the g1 square for my rook. And I have pretty decent ideas now of like a kingside attack. The main idea actually is first, before the kingside attack, I was planning on playing knight a3 and something like long castles. The reason why knight a3 instead of knight d2 is because I think knight d2 kind of blocks my pieces, and knight e3 can go to many other squares. You can go to this, this in some lines. I feel like knight a3 is better, but all that is a moot point, because after knight f6, I realized that, of course, he's trying to play knight d5 and get my bishop. So I have this move bishop g5, and it's very nice because I'm trying to play bishop takes knight. Trying to play bishop takes knight, of course, damage his structure, and then he'd just be lost, right? Because I get rook g1, I get the open file, I get something like this, and my pawn isn't actually too much of a weakness anymore. It's more of a strength. Maybe not knight h4. Maybe I have knight d4 instead, and then this move. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for my opponent to play. My opponent plays bishop b7, which I thought was the best move at the time, because it prepares castling. But actually, I'm just completely better here. And after rook g1, which I play in the game, my opponent plays queen d5, which seems normal. I play this move knight a3. And I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have played knight a3. The reason why I played knight a3, because I thought this pawn was lost anyway. This pawn was lost anyway. My original intention was to play knight d4, but knight d4, I thought c5, and I just didn't think of a good response to it. Now that I'm looking at it after the game, I have knight d4, c5, and probably this move, knight b5, with attacks against his king and the rook and the queen, and everything is hanging, and I'm probably better. But you know what? Sometimes I'm an idiot. That's what you got to know. Oh, and actually, even nicer, after knight e6, which actually defends the square, I just have queen e6. Takes, I go here. He can probably defend it, but then his king is off. His king is in the middle, and I have more development than him, so it should be better. I should have played knight d4. Instead, knight a3 happens. My opponent takes on e6, and I have this interesting move c4, and I actually thought I was better here. I thought I was almost winning. I thought c4 was a great move. Of course, he has to defend the knight, right? And after some move like this, I'm definitely winning. After this move, knight h4, and the queen has to move, and then the queen would be losing defense of the knight, right? But my opponent finds a nice move. My opponent finds the move queen a5, which I thought was bad. For the record, I thought that knight g2 and I was much better, but somehow the tactics actually work out for my opponent, and my opponent misses it. My opponent makes a grave mistake, because this is just bad. What my opponent has to play here, my opponent actually has a couple moves. My opponent can play king d7, for example. My opponent can bring the queen back here, for example. My opponent can bring the queen here, for example, try to play something like this in the future. And yeah, my opponent actually has many moves, but he plays the bad one. He plays knight g5, and I'm back in the driver's seat. I take back with the rook, of course, and now I have a fork, and I'm going to be up a pawn. So, queen b4. I take on g7, attacking the bishop, threatening checkmate. And my opponent plays this nice move, d5. And that's another great move. d5 caught me off guard so much. So much. Because I can't take, right? Takes, the knight takes, and I mean, my position is fine. but there's nothing to write home about. I'm winning here in multiple different ways, but I didn't realize why I was winning. I knew I was better because I have the pressure, but he has a very nice move here. I make a mistake, I believe. I make a mistake. I play CD after a long think. The move here is probably knight b5, right? I'm threatening a fork. He can't castle his king because then he loses the bishop, and it's pretty rough. My opponent's best move is actually just king f8, and yeah, that's bad. Queen h6, defending the rook, and I'm threatening a million discovered checks. If he takes this pawn, if he's greedy, I can probably just play like rook here, and I wouldn't like this position with black being down a rook and having everything against you. I wouldn't like that position. I think that's a bad idea. Knight b5 would have been much better than than CD, but after this move, I thought knight d5 and I'd get queen f3. And I thought that I was actually doing quite well because the knight is kind of weak. It's pinned to the rook. He doesn't have those weird knight move backs where he can defend his rook. And I thought that was decent because I'm also threatening queen f7, but I completely missed his idea. He takes, and I make the wrong move. I go with my idea queen f3, and it's back to equality. Just for the record, the only move here is a very interesting move, queen e6. Attacking the knight, threatening the bishop. And I'm doing very, very well. The move he played in the game and the move that I thought worked here was this move. Oh, he doesn't have it. That's pretty funny. Okay. I guess that's why this move is winning. I missed that. Anyway, queen f3, long castles, and it's back to equality. Here, I ended up playing this move rook b1, defending my b2 pawn, and I'm much worse now. The reason I'm much worse is because my king is actually very, very exposed, and I could be lost here in a couple of moves. What I should have done, I should have realized that I can castle. For some reason, I didn't think I could. I thought castling was just kind of walking into everything, and I didn't want to do that. But it's not. It makes a lot of sense that it's not. Rook b1 would have completely... rook castles would have made a lot of sense. But rook b1 happens. My opponent has this nice move, king b8. Oh, another idea of rook b1 was to take the bishop in some lines. Not immediately, but like I would play queen z2, knight c2. The queen would probably skedaddle off here, and I don't know. Maybe my calculation was flawed, but for some reason, maybe I could sack the rook and take on and go queen a8 in some lines, but you never know. Sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it works. Maybe I'm an idiot, maybe I'm not. These are the questions of the multiverse. No one knows. My opponent goes king b8, and I go rook g4, realizing that this move, bishop f6, actually carries quite a punch, and I didn't want to allow that. Bishop f6, I would have the move rook back to g4, targeting the queen, and I wouldn't be losing the pawn on b2, but my knight is pinned to my king, and after some move like queen a5, for example, actually queen a5 would be bad. I don't know. Maybe he has something else. Maybe, he probably has this move. No, he doesn't. My calculation is messed up. Okay, well, either way. I was scared of that. I played rook g4. It's the best move. I'm smart. Great. My opponent plays queen a5, and I go knight c4, sacrificing my pawn on a2. And I do this for a very good reason. I sacrifice my pawn on a2 willingly. I sacrifice it knowingly because I think that the pawn on a2 doesn't matter anymore. I don't think it really matters. I'm up a pawn anyway. My opponent decides to call my bluff and take it, but I thought that I was doing quite well after knight e5, and I'm threatening two forks. I'm threatening this fork and this fork. So a way to circumvent that would probably be like rook here, but actually that wins. So it is a tough position. It's a tough position to play for black. and I'm doing quite well. Actually, that would blunder a different fork, so I guess this is the only move. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, no, it's not. Rook c4, and I'm actually picking up the knight. Oh, man. Whew. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, that was kind of my idea, and there's a couple moves that work here actually that don't just lose the game on the spot. But my opponent finds one that does lose the game on the spot, bishop b4, and I am such an idiot. I'm kind of mad at myself actually because this, it just makes me mad that I missed this. I ended up playing a stupid move in return. The move I should have played is, of course, realize that the fork still exists, and I'm just gonna pick up the bishop. But for some reason, stupid old me, stupid me. I thought that I had a tactic here. I thought rook b4, and oh man, I just completely missed that the knight as it takes would be guarding the c6 square in return, and I don't have anything. Yeah, a little rough, but knight b4, I give this check, takes. My opponent has this nice sacrifice on d2. I end up taking it. With my king because I don't really have much else. Takes, I go here, attacking the rook, here, and eventually I lose. I put up a kind of a fight here because my opponent gets under a minute, but he has a nice idea. He has this move queen c2, and with unstoppable checkmate with the rook threatening to come down to d1, and I'm just busted. It's over, and so I simply resigned. And those were the 2 games of stupid things happening at the 2000 levels. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys found this instructive, entertaining, all the above. Yeah. Good evening and good night.